Majority Leader.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the quorum call be suspended.
Without objection.
Well, Mr. President, the junior senator from Connecticut certainly believes in saying the quiet part out loud. This is what he said, and I quote, "I think there will be some pretty substantial damage done to a Democrat brand that has been rehabilitated if on the heels of an election in which the people told us to keep fighting, we immediately stop fighting." He said that on a podcast yesterday. He went on to say that the 2026 election is just 12 months away. And if we surrender without having gotten anything, and we cause a lot of folks in this country who had started to believe in the Democrat Party to retreat again, I worry that it will be hard to sort of get them back up off the mat in time for next fall's election cycle, end quote. Let me repeat that, Mr. President. This is what he said. "I worry that it will be hard to sort of get them back up off the mat in time for next fall's election cycle," end quote. Now let that sink in for a minute, Mr. President. I don't think it's a secret to anybody that the Democrats shut down the government for political reasons. There's been plenty of news coverage of the incredible pressure that their far left base has been exerting. But in case anyone was still under the impression that Democrats were driving this shutdown toward its 40th day out of concern for the American people, well, the junior Democrat from Connecticut pretty handily dispelled that notion. Again, that's what he said. "I worry that it'll be hard to sort of get them back off the mat in time for next fall's election cycle," end quote. And just in case anyone needed any additional testimony, Axios reported on Wednesday, and I quote, "A set of post-election talking points circulated among Democratic congressional offices warned caving without concessions would sap Democrats' momentum and undercut the party's support from its base. Democrats throwing Republicans a rope in exchange for nothing would be political self-sabotage," it added. Political self-sabotage, Mr. President. Now, there are two very striking things about these quotes. One, of course, is the focus not on the American people, but on how to ensure Democrats win the next election. And two is the fact that progressive Democrats apparently want to keep this shutdown going forever. We're on day 38 of Democrat shutdown. Day 38. Federal workers have gone more than a month now without pay. They don't know how they're going to pay their mortgage or buy food, thanks to Democrats. A lot of them are supposed to get another paycheck today. Instead, they'll see a deposit of exactly $0 in their bank account. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. Head Start preschools have closed. Veterans programs have shuttered. Many Medicare recipients can't get access to telehealth. National Guard troops aren't training. SNAP benefits are in profound jeopardy. There are people going hungry right now because Democrats refuse to agree to a clean, nonpartisan funding extension. And of course, then there's air travel. Because of staffing shortages caused by Democrat shutdown, the Department of Transportation had to issue a mandatory reduction in air travel beginning today. Hundreds of thousands of people will be affected every day, to say nothing of disruptions to the movement of packages and goods. But nothing seems to move Democrats. Nothing. Not hungry Americans. Not massive disruptions to our economy. Nothing. Mr. President, if I were a Democrat, I would be embarrassed. I mean, flat out embarrassed to walk into this building every day to walk past the men and women of the Capitol Police who are not getting paid thanks to Democrats, to walk past junior staffers, many of whom are undoubtedly frantic by this point as they wonder how they're going to pay their rent and continue to buy food. How can Democrats look any of these people in the eyes? And please don't tell me they're fighting for some greater good for the American people. If Democrats can be said to be fighting for anyone at all besides themselves, they are fighting for a fraction of a fraction, for a tiny percentage of the small percentage of Americans who are on Obamacare. The number of people they're supposedly fighting for is dwarfed, and I say dwarfed, Mr. President, by the number of people whose lives and livelihoods they are damaging. And as for the claim that Democrats got some kind of mandate from the American people on Tuesday to continue jeopardizing food stamps for 40 million Americans in need, give me a break. Democrats performed well in 3 states where Democrats often perform well. Congratulations. I really don't think that means that the American people have all signed up to be democratic socialists. And it sure as heck doesn't provide a good reason for making 40 million Americans go hungry. Mr. President, I would like to think that the junior senator from Connecticut doesn't represent all Senate Democrats. But if there are Senate Democrats out there who do still care about hardworking Americans and not just Democrats' election prospects, the time to act is now. Not when the far left decides this exercise can be over. Not when federal workers are lining up at food banks for their Thanksgiving meal. Now. Today. I hope, Mr. President, there are at least 5 more Democrats out there with a backbone who will vote with us to reopen the government and end these weeks of misery for the American people. Mr. President, I yield the floor, and I suggest the absence of a quorum.
The clerk will call the roll.
Zosserbrooks. Mr. President.
Majority Whip.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask unanimous consent that the quorum call be vitiated.
Without objection.
Mr. President, today is November 7th, 2025. We are now 1 month and 7 days into the longest shutdown in the history of the American government. Democrats can stand here and claim they've broken the record. But for what? For leverage, for politics. Meanwhile, in every state of this union, the American people are getting hurt. They don't seem to care one bit. Soldiers are working without pay at Fort Bragg in Georgia. Where are the 2 Democrat senators from Georgia? A single mom in Michigan is struggling to put food on the table for her children. Where are the 2 Democrat senators from Michigan? Capitol Police officers and staff members on this very floor in this very building are struggling to pay their bills. Do the Democrat senators care about any of them? Government is still closed. They're not getting paid. Each and every one of these people are being hurt by the Schumer shutdown. Every one of them. And every day it gets worse for them. Yet Senator Schumer bragged to the press, bragged to them. He said every day gets better for us. I'm wondering who us is. Certainly not the American people. Certainly not the people whose flights were grounded today all across the country. You know, to keep our airlines and to keep our skies safe, the FAA directed airlines to reduce the number of flights. It's the right thing to do. This has impacted airports all across this country. That's the impact of what the Democrats are doing by keeping this government shut. The FAA administrator, someone with 35 years of experience in the field, he said, "We're in all new territory. Never seen anything like this before." And here's what really should terrify the American people. It's one Democrat staffer said Democrats won't open the government until planes fall out of the sky. Can you believe that, Mr. President? Let that sink in. Democrats are waiting for a disaster. And in the process, they're gambling with American lives. Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut, a Democrat with presidential ambitions, based on his scheduling and his speeches, he admitted it on the record. He said in an interview just yesterday with Punchbowl News, Senator Murphy said reopening the government would do, he said, substantial damage to the Democrats' brand. There you have it. Bad for the brand of functioning government. Democrat brand means more to them than 42 million hungry Americans. The Democrat brand means more to them than military families who aren't getting paid. The Democrat brand means more to them than safety in the skies. Let's call what it is, what we're seeing with the Democrat shutdown. It is cruel and it is heartless. Now, let's be fair. Even some Democrats now recognize that it is cruel and heartless. They're starting to turn on each other. One Democrat staffer admitted to the press that the far-left Democrats in their caucus have no plan to ever end the shutdown. None. Zero. They want to keep it going forever. The staffer even admitted the far-left Democrats are hurting people and they're doing it for political gain. This is the direct quote from the Democrat staff member, Senate staff. Families who can afford it least, he said, are getting walloped every day the shutdown continues. Mr. President, Democrats can and should end this shutdown today. Republicans have a clean, bipartisan continuing resolution at the desk to reopen the government. We want to pair this with 3 full-time appropriations bills. These are bills that have already passed the Senate with bipartisan support. They've been negotiated on a bipartisan basis with the House. Progress. We need to get it done. These bills would fully fund veterans care. They would fully fund our Capitol Police. They would fully fund food assistance in America, such as SNAP and the WIC programs. This is a very reasonable deal, a reasonable proposal, a deal that Democrats earlier this week asked Republicans to put onto the floor. And if it passes, the Schumer shutdown will end quickly. 13,000 air traffic controllers will get paid. 50,000 TSA agents would get paid. 1.3 million military members would be paid. Food assistance for 42 million Americans would be fully funded. Flights would get restored. Government would reopen. Some Senate Democrats have signaled they will still vote no. No. Evidently, they want the pain. They want the pressure. And as members of this body, as well as the Democrat whip, said to the press on television, she said they want, quote, leverage to continue so they can score political points. Let me be clear about what a no vote means. A no vote is a vote to refuse to pay air traffic controllers who are working, refuse to pay TSA agents who have been working for the last 37 days, refuse to pay members of the military who continue to defend us and are serving us all around the world, refuse to pay Capitol Police officers who are here in this very building that the Democrat senators walk by each and every time they come into this chamber. A no vote is a vote to cut more flights and to cause more chaos for families hoping to travel over Thanksgiving. A no vote is a vote to deny food to 42 million hungry Americans. A no vote means Democrats continue to play their dangerous game of the politics of pain. There is no excuse, none, Mr. President, for voting no. Don't tell me I want leverage, which is what the Democrats have been saying. The American people are not leverage, they're not pawns. When Democrats treat American people as political pawns, the American people lose. And I don't want to hear them say, I stand on principle. What are the principles when you allow 42 million Americans to continue to go hungry? The American people are watching. They're watching to see who is fighting for them and who is simply using them as leverage. Thank you, Mr. President, and I yield the floor.
Mr. President.
The Democratic whip.
Mr. President, I have one word for my colleagues on both the other side of the aisle and on my side of the aisle. One word: enough. It is time for us to get down to the business of agreeing on some basic things. I think we can. The first thing we need to do is to agree to reopen the government of the United States of America. I believe we should do it before the sun sets today at 5:02 p.m. and 39 seconds. The second thing we should agree on is to protect the families who are facing outrageous increases in health insurance premiums across the United States. We cannot address the Affordable Care Act and make dramatic changes. We need to legislate for that to happen, and that rarely ever happens around here, but it should. That should be part of our agreement. The third thing is we need to support a bipartisan appropriation process to fund our government. We're lucky. We have two leaders on the Appropriation Committee, one a Republican, Susan Collins, another a Democrat, Patty Murray, who are competent and able to achieve that goal. It is time for us to get rid of the never-ending continuing resolutions and actually appropriate money for purposes that the public sent us here to honor. The fourth thing is we need to collectively apologize and pay in full all federal employees and contractors as soon as possible. It is an embarrassment to come to work each day and realize that these wonderful people who are working with us, doing their job and doing it well and professionally, are not being paid. And finally, we need to pass legislation to guarantee that this the longest shutdown in U.S. history, is the last time Congress ever should be showing political resolve at the expense of food on the table of hungry children. Mr. President, it's time for us to act. Enough. I yield the floor.
Like a lot of people, I've been hoping we could find a way forward and sort of stop the disruption and madness it's causing throughout the country. And I want to say to my colleagues who have been working together to find a solution to open up the government, I really appreciate your efforts very, very much. I know in this polarized environment it's hard to reach across the aisle, but this moment dictates that we try. I've had some discussions, and I know a lot of my colleagues have, Senator Britt and Collins and many others have spent a lot of time, Martin Wayne Mullen, trying to find common ground to open up the government so we can move forward and have a debate about health care and maybe find a solution. Apparently to no avail. There's a group of my Democratic colleagues who believe every day gets better for us, as Senator Schumer. They, I guess, apparently feel emboldened by the election. The question I have for the country is every day getting better for you? If you're trying to get to an airport or fly somewhere, I would say not so much. If you're a government employee working, not getting paid, not so much. There are a lot of services that are being disrupted out there because the government shut down. And truth of the matter is both parties have had government shutdowns trying to get a policy win. You know, one time we shut the government down as Republicans to get money to build the wall. We eventually got money to build the wall because it was a very good idea, but it didn't happen through the shutdown. And so I learned that shutting the government down to try to get a policy win is probably not good government. And our Democratic friends, whatever day it is, they're shutting your government down, our government down, to try to make Republicans do something on health care we're just not going to do. They're trying to repeal elements of the working family tax cut, big beautiful bill, whatever you want to call it, that would prohibit health care funding going to illegal immigrants. They're trying to repeal many of the things that we think are just good reforms, over $1 trillion, pulling back $1.5 trillion to go in programs we think that are not good investments. Investing in a program where illegal immigrants can get free health care just gives you more illegal immigration. One of the things that we're trying to deal with is Medicaid has grown by 50% in the last 5 years, and we're trying to put it on a more sustainable path and helping rural hospitals. They want to take the provision out of the bill that would give $50 billion to rural hospitals to help with Medicaid reform. So we're just not going to do that. That's never going to happen, nor should it. So what do we do next? I think the first thing we need to do is understanding that the statement, every day gets better for us, is a lie. Us being the United States. Every day that this thing drags on is bad for America, it's dangerous for America, it's dangerous to our national security, the people in the FBI, the CIA that have to work no matter where they get paid, simply to protect our nation. So this madness really needs to end. I think there are plenty of people over here that would try to go forward to have a debate about health care and maybe find common ground, but not this way. The one thing I've learned in my time and up here is that taking hostages, political hostage taking, shouldn't be overly rewarded. Political terrorism should never be rewarded. And what you're doing over there by not finding a way forward, you're terrorizing the country for your own political benefit. You really are engaging in political terrorism. You're making it hard for people to do things they need to do and have to do. You're making it hard for people to get services they need because your political desire to beat us. Well, I tell you what, that needs to stop. So to my leadership here, y'all have done a great job, Senator Thune particularly, kind of saying we'll talk, but we've got to open up the government first. I really appreciate what Senator Thune has done in that regard. But I want my colleagues to know the longer this goes and the more people you hurt and the more you try to extract from your political hostage taking, the less votes you're going to get from us, starting with me. I'm not going to give in to this. We're not going to reward people who do this. I understand trying to find common ground and getting something to give something, but you've gone way too far. You're hurting way too many people. You're asking for things that are really absurd. So don't think you're going to open up the government with a handful of Democratic votes if this continues. You're going to need much more than that because you're going to lose me. I'm not going to play this game any longer. This is bad for the country, and if we do it now, it will never end. So Senator Schumer, I couldn't disagree with you more. Every day gets better for us. You clearly need to get out of Washington and talk to people outside the wacky left. You're disconnected with real life in America. Every day this goes on doesn't get better for us. What are you asking us to do? You're demanding that we increase spending by $1.5 trillion from savings we obtained from the Working Families Tax Cut bill. We're not going to do that. But the main thing that's driving this debate is a desire by Democrats to continue a program called Obamacare that is not well designed, that is costing way too much, it's not delivering for the American people, and we're not going to do that. Senator Welch, a good friend, noted yesterday that the Affordable Care Act hasn't lived up to that billing, and there are things we can do on health care to lower cost and make life more affordable. But my statement is that the Affordable Care Act is unaffordable, and we're not going to reauthorize it because you demand we do so, because it makes no sense to keep throwing good money into this program. Now, President Obama told us back in 2010, if we pass the Affordable Care Act, which is the Unaffordable Care Act, families would have a $2,500 a year decrease in their premiums for health care. Well, that's turned out to be a big flop. Healthcare premiums have gone up 100% from 2013 to 2019. So the Affordable Care Act is anything but. And they're asking for $350 billion over a decade to keep these subsidies in place that they chose to do in a partisan way. They're due to expire. If they were that great, why did you let them expire? Bottom line is you're trying to hold us hostage as Republicans, making us invest in a program that's just not a good deal for America. No matter what you call it or how you want to sell it, you're selling a bad product, and that product needs to be discontinued as it exists today. Who is the biggest winner of the Affordable Care Act? Not consumers, a dramatic increase in premiums. We didn't lower premiums by $2,500 per family. They've gone up by over 100% in just a matter of years. Now you're wanting to continue subsidies that create subsidies for the Obamacare that nobody in the private sector has. The average person in America is paying about 25% of their premium that works for a company. What they're trying to do is basically have most people pay nothing and allow people making up to hundreds of thousands of dollars to get subsidies for their health care. We just can't afford that. Senator Klobuchar talked about a husband and wife that retired early from a union job that have a combined income of about $130-something thousand, that their premiums will go up. Well, the question is, do we need to be subsidizing premiums for people that make $130-something thousand that have defined benefit plans plus Social Security? The question becomes, what makes sense? What can we afford? What's the best way to help the American people? I tell you, the best way to help the American people is stop the madness when it comes to Obamacare. What has happened since the passage of this bill? Let me tell you what's happened. Healthcare companies, insurance companies in the healthcare space have had their stock go up since 2010 by over 1,000%. Now, what you want us to do is continue these subsidies that go to insurance companies that drive up the cost of health care. We're not going to do it. We're going to try to find a better way to use the money to give it to consumers so they can buy health care of their own choosing, to create competition that doesn't exist, to get a better health care outcome and save some money in the process. So Democrats are insisting that Republicans continue the practice of taking your hard-earned tax dollars and making healthcare insurance companies incredibly filthy rich. Look at this chart. This is the S&P 500. These are different companies in the space. But the main healthcare companies that benefit from Obamacare have seen their stock increase by 1,000% with no end in sight. United Healthcare, 1,177% increase in stock. Cigna, 822%. 441%. Humana, 490%. They need to up their game. MOLINA, whoever they are, 859%. SENTENE, 604%. Aetna, 595% since the passage of this bill. We are not, as Republicans, going to continue what you've created, a windfall for healthcare insurance companies, inflationary mechanisms in healthcare without an end. We're going to stop and fix what you created in 2010, which is an out-of-control inflationary approach to healthcare that rewards insurance companies over anybody else. You told a big lie to the American people when you passed this bill. Their premiums would go down by $2,500 per family. They've gone up by 100%. We're going to stop the madness. We're going to come out with a proposal that will have a different outcome than this. We're going to come out with a proposal that will allow this money to go to people, to make better choices for them, to create competition that doesn't exist, and the big loser will be the insurance companies. The big winner will be the consumer. And President Trump stands ready to work with you on the other side to get an outcome we can all live with. We cannot live with this, folks. We cannot live with Obamacare and these subsidies as designed because they're creating runaway inflation in health care. They're rewarding the biggest healthcare companies in the country to the expense of the taxpayer. We're going to break this cycle. Now, how long will that take? I don't know. But I know this, I'm not going to be forced to continue this wasteful, inefficient program called Obamacare, and because you tell me I have to open the government. I will not. And we'll have an election one of these days, and we'll see how this plays out over time. We'll see what the American people want. Do they want to continue throwing money at insurance companies like this with increased costs to the taxpayer and people that participate in this program? Or would they like something new and different that would break the endless reward to healthcare companies and start rewarding consumers to get better outcomes and lowering their premiums? We'll have a debate about that one day. We'll have an election probably over that. But what we're not going to do is be held hostage for you to get your way, for me to vote to authorize a program that is failing, that was a lie, and I'm going to do what I can to fix this. And if you want to continue to shut down the government, holding me and others hostages to continue this garbage, we're not going to do it. We'll be rewarding the worst possible behavior in politics. You'll just get more of this. So here's my advice to my Democratic colleagues. Work with people who are trying to find a way forward, to reopen the government, to have a conversation about how to better to deliver affordable health care, working in a bipartisan manner, and we'll get to where we need to go as a country. We will not give in to political terrorism and hostage-taking. Your desire to keep the government shut down is terrorizing Americans. Americans are losing vital services. Their lives have been turned upside down because you care more about continuing a terrible program than you do them. And we're not going to give in. I promise you, I will work with you to get a better outcome. I promise you, I will vote no to your political hostage taking and let the chips fall where they may. You're overplaying your hand. You're doing a lot of damage to good people that just want a better life and some certainty in their life. I try to work with you when I can on the other side. Sometimes we argue, and I try to argue effectively, but I will not be part of this process any longer. You're destroying the lives of Americans for a political desire that's unreasonable. You're asking me and others to continue a program that is fundamentally broken, that's inflationary, and the only winner of Obamacare are the largest health care companies in America who are making excessive profits off a healthcare system you designed, and all you want is more people signed up on this program, and you're rewarding insurance companies for finding more people who are making a fortune, and the delivery of healthcare is costing more, and the quality is going down. We're not going to do this. We're not going to give in to this. So my approach is a nightmare for the healthcare insurance companies. Our approach will be the biggest loser will be healthcare insurance companies. The biggest winner will be consumers who will have choices they don't today and money they can have that they don't have today to buy a better product. That's what this is about. The insistence of the Democratic Party to excessively reward healthcare insurance companies who are doing their bidding to sign up people on government health care that's inefficient, it's not working. You don't care it's inefficient and not working. You just want more people, and you're using the insurance companies in the healthcare space as your agents, as your proxies, and they're willingly doing your bidding. To the insurance companies in the healthcare space, your days are numbered when it comes to this crap. To my Democratic colleagues, you want a debate on health care? Let it begin right now. Look what you're doing with taxpayer dollars. You're not relieving the cost of health care to working people. You're increasing their premiums. You're making health care more inflationary, and the only people that really are winning big are health care insurance companies who are willingly playing this game, and they'll never stop. Why would they? Why would a health care insurance company turn their back on this program when they're making a killing? Well, I don't know what's going to happen or when it's going to happen, but I know this. I will never vote to continue this madness. If you're insisting that I have to continue this program, I will not. I owe it to the people of South Carolina and the country to break this cycle. We owe it to the people of America to open up our government and have a logical discussion about making health care more affordable and breaking the cycle of runaway inflation. You're on a course that's going to disrupt American people's lives to get an outcome that's terrible for the country, which is continuing Obamacare the way it's constructed. You will not be successful. I will make sure there are enough Republicans over here to say no to your plan to hold us hostage and continue to terrorize this country. You've gone too far. If I were you, Senator Schumer, I would rethink. Because I'm telling you, every day is not getting better for you. Because every day is getting worse for the people of this country who interact with the government, who travel, who are working and not getting paid. It's getting worse for them. And you're demanding of something of me and others we will not give into. We will not be held hostage to continue Obamacare that's been a miserable failure. We will not be held hostage to continue to give money to health care companies, insurance companies, to enrich them at the expense of the American people. So I don't know when it ends and how it ends, but I know what the outcome will be with my vote. We're going to break the cycle of rewarding healthcare insurance companies at the expense of the consumer. We're going to stop this madness with my vote. I hope we can find a way forward, but that way forward will not include what's going on today. So I will be voting no to the idea that we will continue these subsidies, rewarding healthcare insurance companies insane amounts, driving up premium cost, and getting bad outcomes to open up the government. I reject that, and I will vote no to that. And the demands you're making grow every day. You're overplaying your hand, and you're hurting people. Stop it. With that, I yield.
Madam President.
Senator from Ohio.
Thank you, Madam President. As you well know, I'm the new guy here. In the past, I watched government shutdowns from afar. They never made sense to me. And now I'm seeing one up close, and I can confirm that government shutdowns are senseless. And this one seems to be one of the most senseless ones of all. But what's it about? Why, for 38 days, would the government be shut down? Well, I know this. On day one, sat in this chamber, listened to the Majority Leader John Thune explain to our Democrat colleagues, open the government, and we'll negotiate on any priorities you want to discuss. So those have been the ground rules from day one. It sounded fair to me. Seems like that's a fair way to do it. But apparently that was not good enough for my Democrat colleagues, some of them who said that the shutdown was necessary to provide leverage to get the policies they wanted to, and they needed to stand up to President Trump. Well, congratulations. Congratulations for setting the record for the longest government shutdown in American history. Hope you're proud. But it came at an enormously expensive price, a very, very high price. And for who is paying that high price? It came at the expense of your constituents. That's who. That's who is paying the price for the government shutdown. And the reality is this, though. President Trump was elected overwhelmingly by the majority of Americans just a year ago. He'll be in office for 3 more years. I know that for many of my colleagues, they don't like that prospect. But that's the reality. That's how we do this in America. We elect presidents every 4 years. And he was elected overwhelmingly by the American people. So I certainly hope, in standing up to him, you do not intend to keep the government shut down for 3 more years. For the process that you're using to gain leverage through your record-long government shutdown is at the price of the American people. They are the ones that are suffering from this, not the people in this chamber, the American people. They are the collateral damage for your leverage. That's who's paying the price for the political game. And who are the they? Who are the they that's paying this price? Well, they are SNAP beneficiaries who don't know if they'll be able to afford food. They are the TSA agents and air traffic controllers who are missing paychecks, some of them having to take other jobs probably. Some of them will soon need to resign because they won't be getting a paycheck and they'll need to find some way to put food on the table. And what's the result of that? Flights being canceled. It's disrupting lives of American people all around the country. That's the price of trying to gain leverage. Congratulations. The Capitol Police that protect this place and all of you, they're part of paying the price for this. They are going unpaid while they still remain on the job. The staff in this chamber, the staff that serves all of you to keep the floor open, to keep the clocks running on time, they pay the price. They're going without pay. Talked to a small business owner the other day who can't get their loan from the SBA. Small business owners are paying the price, and when they pay the price, so do their employees. In my own state of Ohio, 8,000 civilian employees were furloughed from Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. The people that protect our country, they are paying the price for your leverage. These are real people, not bargaining chips. They have real jobs. They have important things that they do to serve our country. They are not bargaining chips for your political leverage. Republicans have voted time and time again to reopen government, cleanly, responsibly, and without games. The same thing that we've asked you to do. I've done it 14 times. My colleagues and I on this side of the aisle have voted 14 times to reopen the government. It's not unprecedented to pass a clean CR to reopen the government. In fact, during the Biden administration, when Republicans didn't run this chamber, they compromised with Democrats and voted 13 times to pass a clean CR to keep the government open, the same thing we've asked you to do 14 times, and you said no. There's a way forward right now, though. We can pass a funding bill today, get workers paid, keep America running, and then pair it with the firm commitment that has been given to debate and vote on the policies that divide us. That's how grown-ups govern, by the way. That's how grown-ups are supposed to do this. We don't always get our way. We debate it, we fight for our values, and we vote. And sometimes we win and sometimes we lose. That's what the majority leader of this body, John Thune, who is a man of his word, has said he would do. My Democrat colleagues say they don't want to give up their leverage in funding government until all of their demands are met. But let's be abundantly clear. It's not Republicans. It's not Republicans that you're hurting with this strategy. It's the American people, the American taxpayer. The American taxpayer that's paying for a government that's not serving them. They are the ones. They are the ones that your strategy is hurting. And I say this with all sincerity. I want to offer a perspective. Because yes, I'm fired up about this. I'm frustrated by it. I think it's wrong. But I want to fix it. So I want to offer this perspective. If leverage was your goal, you got as much leverage now as you're ever going to get. Never going to get better than this. The shutdown has lasted 38 days. Do you really think you'll have more leverage after 48 days or 58 days? You won't. It's just a matter of how much more suffering you will cause until it comes to an end. When will enough be enough? How much suffering must occur before you decide to vote with us to open up the government? I'm not asking you to abandon your principles. Would never do that. Everybody here stands on their principles. They argue and fight for what they want. Would never ask you to abandon your principles. If you want to defend Biden's COVID-era bonuses that prop up a broken Obamacare system, then keep fighting for them. If that's what you believe. Not working. You can propose your own legislation, or, which I would prefer, that you propose some bipartisan legislation that the majority leader of this chamber, I believe, will bring up to a vote. It's time for you to take yes for an answer, to work with us to solve these problems. Madam President, I wasn't here, neither were you, when all the Obamacare legislation was passed. Nor was I here when the Democrats voted to set an expiration date of 2025 for the subsidies that they now say they want to renew. They set the expiration date. But I'm here now. I want to fix it. I want to get some results. But those policies, those Obamacare policies have contributed to increasing health care costs that are the biggest driver of inflation in the 21st century. Look at this chart. This is the cost of consumer goods, services that have increased from 2000 to 2024. Hospital services, number one. Medical care services on this chart. Healthcare inflation is the most dramatic form of inflation that this nation has experienced in the 21st century, and it is due to Obamacare policies. Those are the facts, and that is the reality. I didn't create the problem. Many people in this chamber didn't create the problem. But I want to help solve the problem. I want to reduce the cost of health care. When the government shutdown ends, I am happy to be one of the people that works on solving the problem that others created. We want to fix this. We want people to be able to afford health care. But the way we do that is to drive down the costs. I want to work with anyone in this chamber that will change that, to eliminate the fraud that has filled up this ACA system, to target the benefits to those who truly need them, and to create an insurance market that doesn't rely on endless taxpayer subsidies. Create something that works. Reduce the costs of providing health care in this country. And I say this, for the love of God and country, stop making the American people suffer while we wait to do this. Bring it to an end. Open the government. Let's work together to reduce the cost of health care and make it more affordable. Because the truth is, you have no more leverage today than you did on day one. In fact, you have less, because there's less time to negotiate the items you claim to care about. There is less time today to negotiate it when this all started. So it's a matter of urgency. Let's get this done. Let's get the government open, and let's get to work. It's the longest government shutdown in American history. We can't change what happened in the past 38 days, but we can change the future. We can end this today, right now, today. We can end this. Let's get back to work. The American people expect their leaders to solve problems, not to stage them, not to create them, which is what's happened during this government shutdown. It's long past time to reopen the government, to restore trust, and to prove that the senators in this chamber can lead. That's the question that needs to be resolved, and it needs to be resolved today. It's time to reopen the government. Madam President, I yield.
Madam President.
Senator from Texas.
Madam President, I rise today to speak about a grave matter and a clear violation of religious freedom, human dignity, and the rule of law. In China, Christians are fighting daily for their religious freedom against the Chinese Communist Party. And on October 10th, 2025, the Chinese Communist Party launched the largest coordinated nationwide crackdown in more than 4 decades against a Christian urban house church in China. In that sweep, 23 pastors and church members of the Zion Church, one of China's largest underground congregations, were arrested and wrongfully detained, including Pastor Ezra Jin. Pastor Jin and the members of the Zion Church were not engaged in violence. They were worshiping. They were serving God. And for that action, they are being treated as enemies of the communist state. Last week, I introduced a bipartisan, bicameral resolution to condemn the abduction of Pastor Jin and the Zion church leaders and to demand their immediate release. This resolution is designed to pressure Chinese leadership to release the congregation members and to let them practice their Christian faith freely. It sends a message that faith is not a crime, and a government that fears its citizens' faith is nothing more than an oppressive tyranny. Pastor Jin's daughter and her husband, Bill, a native Houstonian, wrote about the CCP's persecution in the Washington Post this past week. In their column, they made a piercing observation, and I want to share it here in full. Quote, "There are few more obvious ways to showcase the bankruptcy of an ideology and the vitality of the Christian faith than by forcing peaceful believers to suffer for the sake of their convictions." This is a profound truth. China, like other communist regimes before it, utterly despises the fact that there is and always has been a higher authority than the state itself. In its effort to bring every aspect of society under brutal government control, the CCP uses state power to drive fear into the hearts of its citizens. History has shown these tactics will fail, and the persecuted church will only grow stronger. The Apostle Paul reminds us that God gave us not a spirit of fear, but of power and of love. I know that that same spirit, one of power and of love, is what the church in China is fighting with. I urge my colleagues to join me in passing this resolution unanimously, to show our support for Pastor Jin, his family, and his fellow believers, and to show the world that the United States stands on the side of freedom, on the side of faith, and we stand with the persecuted Christians in China. Madam President, I ask unanimous consent that the Foreign Relations Committee be discharged from further consideration and the Senate now proceed to S-Res 463.
The clerk will report.
Senate Resolution 463 expressing condemnation of the Chinese Communist Party's persecution of religious minority groups and so forth.
Without objection, the committee is. The Senate will proceed to the measure.
I ask unanimous consent that Cruz's substitute amendment to the resolution be considered and agreed to.
Without objection.
I know of no further debate on the resolution as amended.
If there's no further debate, the question is on the resolution as amended. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. The resolution as amended is adopted.
Madam President, I ask unanimous consent that the Cruz substitute amendment to the preamble be agreed to, the preamble as amended be agreed to, and that the motions to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table.
Without objection.
Madam President.
Senator from Texas.
Madam President, I rise today to honor a very special group of Americans, the soldiers, the sailors, the Marines, and the airmen who have fought bravely for this nation, but who have received the very highest distinction that any member of the armed forces can earn, the Medal of Honor. Since 1863, presidents of the United States have awarded the Medal of Honor to more than 3,500 of the bravest men and women ever to wear the uniform of this nation. Each one has demonstrated valor, gallantry, and heroism above and beyond the call of duty, with acts so selfless, so extraordinary, that they stand as beacons of courage for future generations. In 1916, Congress passed Public Law 6556, establishing the Army and Navy Medal of Honor roll and entitling each Medal of Honor recipient to a modest special pension of $10 per month for life. Over time, that monthly amount has gradually increased from $10 to $100 to what stands today at approximately $1,400 per month. But Madam President, let's pause and think about that. $1,400 a month for those who risked everything: their safety, their future, their very lives for freedom. For the opportunity for all of us to be here today. Today, there are 61 living Medal of Honor recipients. 61 men who faced unthinkable odds, who put their country before themselves so that the rest of us could live in peace. We cannot truly ever repay them. There is no sum, there is no medal, there are no words that can measure up to their sacrifice. But there are ways that we can continue to honor them by ensuring that they are cared for, respected, and supported. Madam President, in January of this year, I introduced the Medals Act, my legislation to raise the monthly pension for Medal of Honor recipients. This legislation is a way for this nation to say, we see you, we remember you, and we will not forget what you have done. Many of these heroes spend their time traveling the country, speaking to school children, visiting military hospitals, and strengthening the very fabric of America. This monetary increase will allow them to continue those efforts and to reach more communities, mentor more veterans, and remind all of us about the cost of freedom. And I'd like to take a moment to recognize 9 Medal of Honor recipients who currently live in the Lone Star State. We honor them and we cherish them. I would also like to recognize the 139 Medal of Honor recipients who were either born in, entered the service from, or died in Texas. These are America's heroes, and they are heroes for the great state of Texas. Now, I'd like to take a moment to recognize the Medal of Honor recipients with us here in the gallery: Lieutenant Colonel William Swenson and Colonel Paris Davis. In just a moment, I will propound a unanimous consent request to take up and pass H.R. 695, the House-passed version of the Medal Act that passed the House 424-0. I urge my colleagues to join me, as our companions in the House have already done, in supporting this measure, in passing it into law, in sending it directly to the President's desk to be signed into law, and showing that when it comes to honoring our nation's very greatest heroes, we are united and we speak with one voice. Madam President, I ask unanimous consent that the Committee on Veterans Affairs be discharged from further consideration of H.R. 695 and the Senate proceed to its immediate consideration.
The clerk will report.
H.R. 695, an act to amend Title 38 United States Code and so forth.
Without objection, the committee is discharged. The Senate will now proceed to the measure.
Madam President, I ask unanimous consent that the bill be considered read a third time and passed, and that the motion to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table.
Without objection.
Thank you, Madam President, and I yield the floor.
Clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Also Brooks.
Madam President,
Senator from Wisconsin.
I ask that the quorum call be initiated.
Without objection.
So, Madam President, 2 weeks ago I came to the floor in support of a bill that we were going to vote on, a motion to proceed, called the Shutdown Fairness Act. Pretty simple bill. The name pretty well describes exactly what it is. It's trying to be fair during these dysfunctional shutdowns, that any of the federal workers who are forced to work because they're in our military, they're in federal law enforcement, they're TSA or they're air traffic controllers, that they're keeping this nation and Americans safe. If we're going to force them to work, at a minimum, let's make sure we pay them and pay them on time. I came down in as nonpartisan manner as I possibly could. and literally begged the other side, just join us. Vote to proceed to the bill. That they had some objections to it, things that I was willing to address. For example, my bill only addressed workers that were forced to work. They wanted to include furloughed workers. I said on the floor, listen, I'm happy to add that as an amendment. I think, working with my conference, I can get the conference to support it as well. It wasn't quite that easy, but in the end, we overcame objections within our conference to adding furloughed workers. So we've completely amended the bill now. We've added furloughed workers. In the meantime, surprising to me, we had federal employee worker unions reach out to us, asking what they could do to help pass this bill. They are sick and tired of being used as pawns in this political dysfunction here. They're tired of it. One of the things that definitely appealed to them once I added furloughed workers was my bill makes it permanent. My bill says we will never use you again as a pawn in the political gamesmanship that's being played out right now. So I'm happy to report the Shutdown Fairness Act, as I've now amended it, adding furloughed workers, is supported by the American Federation of Government Employees, the Federal Managers Association, Federal Law Enforcement Officers Association, National Air Traffic Controllers Association. We tragically had a plane go down early in the week. I'm not saying it's because of air traffic control, but we understand the danger. We have to understand the risks we are taking in not paying air traffic controllers so we can fully man our air towers and keep our airspace safe. The International Association of Firefighters supports my bill. The Association of Flight Attendants does. So again, one of the main reasons they support my bills, in addition to the fact that we added furloughed workers, is my bill makes this permanent. So, Madam President, I ask unanimous consent that the Senate proceed to the immediate consideration of calendar number 191, Senate Bill 3012. I further ask that the Johnson substitute amendment at the desk be considered and agreed to the bill as amended, be considered read a third time and passed, and that the motions to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table.
Is there objection?
Madam President.
Senator from Michigan.
Madam President, reserving the right to object. I just want to first start off and say that I just deeply appreciate that Senator Johnson has updated his proposal to pay all federal employees during the shutdown to include furloughed workers as well as DC employees. So I appreciate all those efforts. I've worked on a number of bills with the senator from Wisconsin. We'd like to continue to work on this bill as well as we go forward. But unfortunately, I just still have some concerns about the way that the bill has been drafted so far. Those are things that I think we can work out and want to work out. We've been going back and forth with our staff. I'm concerned that Senator Johnson's bill still leaves too much discretion up to President Trump. There's too much wiggle room for the administration to basically pick and choose which federal employees are paid and when. And I'm also deeply concerned that this would allow the administration to actually transfer this money to other purposes that are unintended by Congress, which unfortunately we have seen happen repeatedly in this administration. So I believe there are ways that we can put in guardrails. There's a way we can get to that, but we're just not there yet. And I would certainly ask the indulgence of my colleague from Wisconsin to look. We've sent another proposal over to his staff. We can work on this quickly and try to figure out how we get there. But in the meantime, I've also introduced a bill that would pay federal employees just for this shutdown, without the additional powers to the administration. It's just basically a clean bill. No additional language, no complications, no wondering what does this actually mean. It's very straightforward. My Military and Federal Employees Protection Act would ensure that all federal employees receive the pay that they certainly deserve, allowing them to pay their bills on time this month. I've asked Senator Johnson to support my very simple proposal, which I think accomplishes most everything he wants to do, with the exceptions of things about giving the administration more power. I think we can agree on that, whether we can pay our troops and our federal employees, period. That would be my goal. So I will continue to work to this end, to work to end this government shutdown and address the health care crisis. But in the meantime, we must protect our hardworking federal employees. My bill is very straightforward. We could agree to that right now, and it's done. Federal employees are going to get paid without all the other extraneous language that's in the senator's bill. Therefore, I ask that the senator modify his request so that instead the Appropriations Committee be discharged from further consideration S3043, and that the Senate proceed to its immediate consideration, that the bill be considered read a third time and passed, and that the motion to reconsider be considered, made, and laid upon the table.
Does the senator from Wisconsin so modify your request? His request?
Reserving the right to object, Madam President. It's important the American public understands what's going on here. Again, I came down here 2 weeks ago. I modified my bill quite dramatically. Entered into talks immediately with the senator from Delaware and the senator from Michigan. Within those talks, again, 2 weeks ago, they were accusing my bill of giving the president all this additional authority. In discussions staff to staff, they admitted there is no additional authority I'm giving the president in this bill whatsoever. This bill is completely silent on presidential authority in terms of who he can furlough. As a matter of fact, everybody's included. Every employee is now included. There's no discretion whatsoever in terms of who's furloughed, who gets brought back to work, who gets paid. They all get paid. The senator from Michigan is well aware of this. Those discussions, I'd say, petered out within a few days. I don't know, they were emboldened, they're just digging their heels in, they're going to continue this shutdown. Don't feel that they're getting blamed for it, didn't have much pressure on it. Now, here 2 weeks later, they want to redline the bill. Well, in that 2 weeks, we've had our bill examined exhaustively by our leadership, by OMB, by the unions. Our bill is in a really good place right now. We've tried to think of everything. No federal employee would be excluded from this. The senator from Michigan says my bill allows the president to pick and choose. That's total hogwash. Again, every federal employee, including contractors, gets paid. There's no picking and choosing. That is completely false. Money transfers, what is he talking about? More power? There's no power. It is completely silent in terms of presidential authority. These are false arguments. This is further evidence of the gamesmanship the Democrats are playing with people's lives. They are the party of big government. They've in effect taken a family member hostage. I see our leader on the floor here. He's been doing everything he possibly can to help Democrats release their own hostage. Open up the government. Once you do that, we're happy to talk to you about how to repair the damage done by Obamacare and transition to a system that works. But they're playing politics. They're using federal employees, and quite honestly, the American public now, whose flights are being delayed, whose skies are less safe. They're using public employees, the American public, as pawns in this grotesque display of partisanship. My bill is very simple. It's backed by the public sector unions who generally don't support things I'm putting forward. And if the senator insists on objecting to this, preventing these people, these workers, these people who keep us safe from getting paid in this round, my guess is we'll take a vote on this to proceed to the bill. The problem with that is it's going to take much more time. If we could pass this by unanimous consent right now, we can send it over the House. The Speaker has already indicated if we pass the Shutdown Fairness Act, he'll bring his people back. They're on a 48-hour call. We could have this passed by Monday. Our skies would be safer again. Federal employees would be treated fairly. They would be paid. And they will never, ever be used as pawns in this kind of this grotesque partisan gamesmanship. So, Madam President, I will not modify my request.
Wisconsin yield for
Absolutely.
Madam President, I'm trying to understand what's going on here, and perhaps the senator from Michigan can clarify. So every public sector employees union is supporting the senator from Wisconsin's bill, but you're objecting because you think it grants too much power to the president. Now, if that's, I don't know how every public sector employees union would be in support of this bill. And my understanding is the modification proposed by the senator from Michigan would essentially cover back pay, but wouldn't do anything to address going forward. So in other words, we're going to keep federal employees hostage. So they might get paid for back pay, but starting tomorrow, they're not going to get paid again. And that means that in the future, they continue to be pawns. They continue to get held hostage. This is a straightforward approach that addresses that issue. And that everybody in this chamber who isn't getting paid, I can't believe people come down here and look these people in the eye when he's saying right here, we will pay them not only for today, but for tomorrow and for the entire year, and we won't allow them to be held hostage and be pawns in a political game in the future. And my understanding is the senator from Michigan, on behalf, I suppose, of other Democrats, is objecting to that. Please, please help me understand. This is a straightforward proposal which addresses the concern that millions of Americans have who are headed to food banks and can't pay their rent. And you're coming down here and saying you're going to object because you just want to pay them for yesterday, not for tomorrow or the next day after that. It's about leverage, isn't it? Isn't that what you all been saying? It's about leverage? This isn't leverage. This is the lives of the American people. Senator from Wisconsin has put forward a straightforward proposal to pay people, federal employees, today, tomorrow, and in the future. And what you're essentially saying is, well, I'm fine with paying them for yesterday, but we're not going to pay them for tomorrow or for the day after that, for the future. And we don't seem to care that there are men and women in uniform who are frequenting food banks, who are not making rent payments, or trying to borrow to get by because it's leverage. So, Mr. President, Madam President, I should say, I would hope, we're going to vote on this, so Senator from Michigan can object to the unanimous consent request the senator from Wisconsin made. But everybody in this chamber is going to be put on the record on whether or not they want to pay federal employees. Not yesterday, but today and tomorrow and into the future. I am tired of the political games. I really am. And so feel free to object to something that I don't know how anybody in their right mind can walk into this chamber, look these people in the eye, and say, we're not going to pay you. So we're going to vote on it. You object to it right now, but everybody in this chamber is going to vote on whether or not they want to pay federal employees, something that every single public employees union has said they support. I yield back to the Senator from Wisconsin.
Reclaiming my time for briefly to reemphasize the fact, if we can pass this now, and again, Senator from Michigan, I'm literally begging you, do not object. Do not object. It's still going to take a couple days to actually pass this. If we have to go the route of motion to proceed, getting on a bill, I mean, that's going to take quite some time. Our skies can't remain at this level right now. We can't continue these airport delays. We can't continue to use public sector employees and the American public in general as pawns in this partisan gamesmanship. So literally, I think you know me. You know I'm saying this in good faith. Please do not object. Let this bill pass so the House can come back and sign this into law, and these good people who are forced into work or who have been furloughed can get the pay they deserve. Again, today, tomorrow, and in the future, assured they will never, ever be used like pawns in these partisanship games. But again, I'll underscore. Use public sector employees and the American public in general as pawns in this partisan gamesmanship. So literally, I think you know me. You know I'm saying this in good faith. Please do not object. Let this bill pass so the House can come back and sign this into law, and these good people who are forced into work or who have been furloughed can get the pay they deserve. Again, today, tomorrow, and in the future, assured they will never, ever be used like pawns in these partisanship games. But again, I'll underscore, I will not modify my request.
Madam President.
Objection is heard to the modification.
I have
Senator,
not objected yet.
Is there an objection to the original request?
Thank you, Madam President. Senator from Wisconsin, I know your intent. You and I have worked on a lot of issues. That's not in question here. We do have problems with some of the language in this bill just to make sure that we have guardrails. I want to pay federal employees. That's why I have the bill that's on the floor right now that I'm trying to move. It will pay federal employees. It'll pay contractors as well. You're not doing that, I understand. Everybody who is being shorted right now should be paid, and that's what my legislation does. So we could do that. You know, I'm happy if you want to take my legislation and put your name on it, I'll support it, and we'll pass it right now and send it there, and people are going to get paid. So if you really want to do that, we could do that today. Would you want me to just to put your name on this bill and then we'll pass it? That would be fine to do that. But folks are, excuse me, I haven't reclaimed. So we can make that happen. And if you put it on the floor later, we'll go through the process. I would hope that you and I, during that process, could work on language to perhaps address some of the concerns that I have. It's not that we pay people. That's not my concern. I wouldn't be offering this legislation here today if I was concerned about that. I want them paid. Labor unions support my bill too. No surprise. They're getting paid. And that's why I've introduced it. This is not a political game. I hope we get the shutdown opened. I hope we're able to find common ground to say that we want to lower the cost of Americans of affordable health care, that we don't want to see their premiums go up and people lose insurance. I hope we can do that. It's not a game. I don't see this as leverage. Now, a president who refuses to release SNAP funds to feed people, now that is what is irresponsible and irreprehensible leverage. Money's available to feed people right now, and this president is saying no. The court has ordered him to put that money into food, and he says, I'm going to appeal it. That is absolutely despicable that the President of the United States wants to starve children in order to get his way. We got to move beyond that. We got to find common ground. I hope we can find common ground in this bill. My bill is just plain, simple, clean, no games, no other language. We know we have to have guardrails when we have a lawless president. We better put some guardrails in. He walks over Congress all the time. My colleagues on the Republican side, just let him walk over Congress all the time. I don't know why you ran for office if you just want to be run over by a president. We're a co-equal branch of government. We're here to represent the people of our states. So let's work together, be thoughtful about this, understand that if Congress puts this law forward, it actually goes the way we want, and we don't have a president that basically thumbs their nose at members of the Senate and the House and do what he wants, and he knows the Republicans will say, oh, well, that's fine. We're just here to rubber stamp. That's what we're here for. So let's hope we can work together to get this right, pay employees. They should be. They have a right to that. And I think we can do this if we can get together and get beyond the rhetoric and games we're here and the leader that I heard. It's also on this side as well. So let's work together. Let's open up this government. Let's end this shutdown. Let's make sure people have affordable health care in this country. Let's make sure our employees get paid. Let's do all of that this weekend. I'm on board for all that. Hopefully we can get it done.
Is there objection to the original request?
Madam President.
Objection is heard. Senator from Wisconsin.
So again, let me correct, I hate to say falsehoods, just presented here in the chamber. My bill is completely silent in terms of presidential authority. The senator from Michigan, I know they wanted to put language in there to restrict presidential authority, but the fact of the matter is, and I made him well aware of this, that's a bill that would never be signed into law. So if you're serious about actually paying the workers, you'll recognize the fact, admit that my bill is completely silent. It does not add, it does not detract from presidential authority. There's nothing in the bill that does that. Secondly, we tried to come accommodations with a number of senators from the other side for a couple of weeks. Pretty much fell on deaf ears. So again, I know it is unfortunate that he objected right now. And if we proceed and vote and actually get on the bill, and I hope at least we do that, that will take quite some time. So seeing as he's already objected, what I am happy to do, not happy, I'm very disappointed I'm going to have to do this, but we'll look at their language. If it's acceptable, and again, if he is doing anything with presidential authority, adding or detracting, that won't be signed into law. It's a fruitless exercise. But if we can accept their language, we'll look at it, and then maybe we can come back down here, do another unanimous consent request, and pass this today. That is what I hope we can do. So we'll look at the language. It's very unfortunate we didn't pass it right now, but maybe later this afternoon we can do so. With that, I yield the floor.
President.
Senator from Oregon.
I appreciate that my colleagues from Wisconsin and Michigan are striving to find a path to make sure that folks are paid. Folks who are working should be paid. Folks who are furloughed should be paid. But here is the problem with the proposal from my colleague from Wisconsin. And that is, we have a president right now that is violating the Constitution. Every time you hear the President of the United States say, hey, I'm ending that program because it's not in alignment with my priorities. Or a cabinet member who says, we're going to kill those grants because they're not in alignment with the president's priorities. What you are hearing is an authoritarian statement in violation of the Constitution. So in recognition, we have an out-of-control tyrant in the Oval Office violating the Constitution. We have a responsibility right here to defend the Constitution. And that's exactly why my colleague from Michigan put those protections into the bill. If you have a president who chooses what programs are funded and not, that is an authoritarian country, and that's what we have right now. The whole vision of our nation was founded on these senators and these House members coming from different districts and different states with different life experiences and different geographic interests, and bringing them to forge a consensus or forge a vision of how to address the challenges in every part of our nation. Not to have one person down Pennsylvania Avenue who knows a little bit about New York and a little bit about Florida, has a certain one point of view, be a tyrant. Martial law would be empowered by the proposal from Wisconsin. And that's why my colleague from Michigan was absolutely right to ensure we here in the Senate defend the Constitution. Thank you.
Madam President,
Democratic leader.
first, after I finish my remarks, I ask unanimous consent the following senators be recognized for up to 5 minutes each: Peters, Baldwin, Kelly, Welch.
Without objection.
Thank you, Madam President, and I'll be brief. After so many failed votes, it's clear we need to try something different. What the Senate is doing isn't working for either party and isn't working for the American people. Democrats have said we must address the health care crisis, but Republicans have repeatedly said they won't negotiate to lower the health care costs until the government reopens. So let's find a path to honor both positions. Democrats would like to see an end to this shutdown, and we want to respect Leader Thune's desire not to negotiate on ACA until after the government reopens. Therefore, we'd like to offer a simple proposal that would reopen the government and extend the ACA premium tax credits simultaneously, and then have the opportunity to start negotiating longer-term solutions to health care costs. Let's do all three. I've spoken with my caucus, and Democrats are offering a very simple compromise. Democrats are ready to clear the way to quickly pass a government funding bill that includes health care affordability. Leader Thune just needs to add a clean one-year extension of the ACA tax credits to the CR so that we can immediately address rising health care costs. That's not a negotiation. It's an extension of current law, something we do all the time around here, as we all know. But we also offer this. Let's create a bipartisan committee that will continue negotiations after the government reopens on reforms, ahead of next year's enrollment period, to provide long-term certainty that health care costs will be more affordable. This proposal reopens the government and ensures working families who are shopping right now for their health care get certainty and financial relief. While open enrollment has begun, insurers can update their rates after we pass a simple extension of the tax credits. With this approach, we do not negotiate health care in the shutdown, as Leader Thune has maintained he wishes, and the American people get the tax credit extension they want. That is what many of our Republican colleagues have floated over the last 6 weeks as a compromise: a one-year tax credit extension and reforms to the credit beyond that. We will agree with the Republican request not to start negotiations until after the government reopens. All Republicans have to do is say yes to extend current law for 1 year. It makes sense. And since what we're proposing is only a simple extension of current law, the Senate could do this within a few hours. This is a reasonable offer that reopens the government, deals with health care affordability, and begins a process of negotiating reforms to the ACA tax credits for the future. Now, the ball is in the Republicans' court. We need Republicans to just say yes. I yield to Senator Peters.
Thank you, Leader Schumer.
Senator from Michigan.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, Republicans have repeatedly said that they will not negotiate reforms to the health care law credits until the government reopens. I will tell you right now that all my colleagues on this side of the aisle definitely want to open government, and we want to do it as soon as possible. We are also willing to respect Leader Thune's desire to negotiate after the shutdown. So Democrats are offering today a very simple, straightforward compromise. And if Republicans accept this, we could open the government today. Wouldn't that be fabulous? Market. We all want to end the shutdown. We want to ensure that government services can continue, and we want to ensure our hardworking federal employees get the pay that they have earned. But Democrats have made clear since day one that in order to get the votes that Republicans need, we must address the health care crisis. Because the American people have made it clear they want Congress to take action on this issue, it's literally life or death for far too many American families. I know many of my Republican colleagues want to work on this issue too. I've had conversations with so many of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle who want to try to figure out how we fix this. But they've said repeatedly we won't negotiate until government reopens. Leader Thune has said, quote, "Give us the votes to open up the government. Then we will have a conversation about some of these issues that you want to discuss." And I think health care is certainly something we are anxious to all talk about, end of quote. And perhaps most importantly, even President Trump has said he'd be happy to work with Democrats on health care policies, but only once the government is reopened. Well, I agree with my Republican colleagues. It's not realistic to reform a major health care policy in just a few days. That's not going to happen. And I respect Leader Thune and President Trump's desire to work on this when the government is reopened. And I'm willing to compromise on that. My colleagues are willing to compromise this, and it's something that can be done today if we need to. But our Republican colleagues have to be willing to compromise too. Compromise is a two-way street. And they have shown us that and we want them to show us that these are not just empty words, that they really are willing to compromise, and they do want to take action. So that's why we've put forward this very simple proposal. Extend the tax credits for 1 year. We are not asking to make any major changes to the current law. Just extend that to protect people who are suffering right now and are hurting. We're just asking to keep the credits in place for 1 year so that families can see some immediate financial relief from the costs that are going through the roof, so that they can make important decisions about buying their health care right now during open enrollment. This is live. People are dealing with this situation as we speak. We can fix this. If we care about making sure families can afford their health care, we should all agree on that. We should get 100 votes here for people to say we're going to do everything we can to protect health care for Americans. And we can do that right now. And we can open up government right now. We can pay employees. We can move this country forward if we do that. All we need is a very simple extension of a law that's already existed for some time. We know that from the start that any deal will ultimately have to be a compromise. It doesn't have to be unanimous. There'll be likely folks on both sides that may feel uncomfortable with this, and I get that, and that's the way this place works. But our proposal would try to work in a bipartisan way by creating a bipartisan committee that will continue negotiations on reforms ahead of next year's enrollment process. So we're not pulling the rug out from underneath families. We're going to do it ahead of time so folks know exactly what to expect going forward. So I'm telling you now, Madam President, if we vote for this compromise today, we could open up government. This could all be behind us. Families could get some certainty for their future for the next year while we look at long-term solutions. The government can open, but it takes all of us just to say, we're willing to compromise for the good of the country. My colleagues are standing here saying we are willing to compromise for the good of the country. I just hope my Republican colleagues agree.
Mr. President, or Madam President.
Senator from Vermont.
There's a lot of focus on what divides us, but the real opportunity here is what unites us. We're having a contest here with this shutdown where our side is very concerned about what happens to these tax credits. Your side is very concerned about using a shutdown as a tactic. I think we both have pretty valid arguments, and one of the reasons I think there's merit in our position is the reality that once the December 31st deadline arrives, people literally are going to lose health care. So what unites us? Both sides really do want to have all of government paid, and we want to be reopened. And both sides, I believe, want to make certain that the people we represent continue to have access to health care, that the health care they had in 2025, they're going to have in 2026. That won't happen unless we resolve this. And given the time crunch, the only way, as a practical matter, we can do something that helps the people you represent and helps the people I represent is extend what we have for another year. So it's not an overreach on the part of, say, folks who want a single-payer health care system. It's not overreach or diminishing any concerns folks on the Republican side, and by the way, on our side, have about the cost of health care. We are in a practical crunch where unless this United States Senate acts, the people we represent are going to lose health care. That's the fact. That's just the fact. It's the way it is. And we've talked about how those premium increases are going to spike. So what do we do in this situation where Leader Thune, who we trust, who we respect, is taking a position that we won't have discussions until we reopen government? Why do we object to that or have cautions about that? We trust Leader Thune. We trust our Republican colleagues. But what happens after it goes out of the Senate? We have no guarantee whatsoever it'll be taken up in the House at all. So the question that a farmer in Vermont would ask me at the end of any agreement is, Peter, what does this mean? Will I get my health care in 2026? And unless we have it where it's going to get a vote with some support from our colleagues in the House, the answer is I don't know, but I hope so. So we find ourselves with January 1st here, and that farmer, that small business person, not having health care. And again, this is the lament I have. What we're trying to do here, the folks who are going to benefit or not suffer are Republicans who voted for Trump and Democrats who voted for Harris and independents who didn't like either candidate at all. So we have an opportunity. And actually, we're the only people in the United States of America who have an opportunity. The only people, it's us, who've been entrusted by the people who we represent with their vote to solve this problem. And what I think is being proposed has a quality that's rare around here. It's restraint. We're not trying to overreach. We're just trying to say, maintain the status quo so that the folks in America who are getting their health care with the help of some tax credits will continue to have that health care in 2026 as they have it in 2025. So I hope we can come together for this temporary fix. And by the way, I just want to say the cost of health care is exploding. And we have an obligation, if we want to maintain access to health care, to address that. It's not a solution to deal with the health care crisis by taking people off of health care. They still get sick. So when our leader says that we want this bipartisan committee to address the cost of health care, we are sincere about that, because the biggest threat to the continued access to health care is the exploding cost of health care. I yield to my colleague from Wisconsin.
Madam President.
Senator from Wisconsin.
I rise today to echo, to underscore, to emphasize what my colleagues have just presented. This is our path forward. This is how we reopen the government and lower health care costs for millions of Americans. This is what compromise looks like. Look, if I had my way, we would be making these enhanced premium tax credits for working families permanent. But I understand that we can't get everything that we want. That's how compromise works. And that is what our constituents expect that we do when we come here. I know that giving relief for the 275,000 Wisconsinites who are shopping online at healthcare.gov for healthcare as we speak, I know that this relief is urgent, just like it's urgent that we reopen our government. I've had so many conversations with my Republican colleagues here in the Senate. I know that so many of them have expressed privately that they are supportive of a one-year extension of Affordable Care Act tax credits. You know, they're hearing from their constituents who will no longer be able to afford their health care also, just like we are. So I hope my Republican colleagues can join us in voting to pass this proposal so that we can finally put this shutdown behind us and allow 22 million Americans to rest easier, knowing that their health care costs are not going to double, triple, or even worse. That I yield to the Senator.
Madam President.
Senator from Arizona.
Madam President, for more than a month, I've been here in D.C. fighting to keep health care costs from spiking for my constituents. And for more than a month, I've been hearing from people I represent about what their health care costs now and what it will cost if these tax credits are allowed to expire. People like Leslie from Buckeye, who's a diabetic and whose premium is about to go from $600 a month to $1,000 per month. And people like Jessica from Yuma, her and her husband currently pay $560 per month for them and their 3 kids. That's going to go to $3,100 per month if these tax credits are not extended. And for more than a month, I've been waiting for the President or Republican leadership in the Senate to sit down with us and try to figure this out, or even show that they care about the millions of Americans in our states who are in the same boat, people like Leslie and Jessica. Now, that hasn't happened. The President, as far as I can tell, has spent about 1 hour in the Oval Office with congressional leadership on this issue. 1 hour in 37 days. He has spent more time talking about his ballroom and on 2 overseas trips and at a costume party at Mar-a-Lago and, of course, on the golf course. The House of Representatives, they've been on a 7-week paid vacation. They are not even pretending to care about these rising health care costs. And the Senate, not much better. Week after week, the leadership of the Senate breaks for a long weekend, all while Americans are suffering. And they're suffering even more because Donald Trump is using them as pawns in this fight. He's still trying to illegally withhold SNAP benefits from hungry Americans, including children, to use as leverage. Donald Trump's official position on the government shutdown is that he will let hardworking Americans go hungry until we give in to his demands to let health care premiums go up dramatically for millions of Americans. Now, is that the position of my Republican colleagues? I keep hearing from many of you that you want to do something about this, but you say you can't negotiate. Not now. So let's just lay it out here. We need to extend government funding to reopen the government. But we also need to extend these tax credits so millions of Americans can actually afford their health care. So let's do both. No gimmicks, no changes. Let's reopen the government. But we can do that knowing that Jessica and Leslie and a whole bunch of other people that we represent can take their kid to a doctor and fill their prescriptions for another year. There is no reason why we can't agree on this. If you want to reopen the government and you want to help keep health insurance premiums from spiking, then let's do it. But if you say no, if you say you can't vote for something like this, well, let's just be honest about it. Tell the Jessicas and Leslies in your state that they're not going to be able to afford their health care anymore. Tell them that Donald Trump thinks that they should go to a food bank for groceries so they can have something to eat. Now, Madam President, I also think we need to be perfectly clear about why we are here and how we got here. All of this we have discussed over the last month is because Donald Trump and Republicans in the House and Senate wanted to give a big, giant tax cut to the wealthiest Americans, a $4 trillion giveaway. And again, Madam President, we want a deal. We can choose to fix this so Jessica and Leslie and millions of others can afford to have basic health care. I yield the floor.
Senator from Delaware.
Madam President, I actually have written notes here. I came prepared to talk about the importance of the ACA tax credits. And as I sat here, I prayed, what do I even say in this moment? There's a scripture that says, choose ye this day. Today, we have an opportunity to make a choice. We have an opportunity to do something that is so plain and so simple. There's a book in the Bible called the book of Habakkuk. A lot of people don't even know it. It's like three chapters. And in it, it says, we always hear how long, not long. No, in it, it says long. It says pain. It says corruption. It says suffering. But what it does say is make a plan and make it plain. So what we come today to say is we have something that is plain and simple and will lift up America. And that is the opportunity to both open the government and restore people's health care. It's that plain, it's that simple. We're not saying you're better than us and we're better than you. We're saying link them together on behalf of the American people. It's a sad day in America when people have to choose between their health care and housing, or their health care and food. We're not in a pandemic. There are no wars on our shores. This should not be a hard time for us. We are not without resources in this country. And so today, as many people are being priced out of the American dream, I ask my colleagues, come to the table, work with us. I'm so proud to be one of the freshman class, one of the most diverse classes in the history of this chamber, with Alyssa Slotkin, with Ruben Gallego, with Adam Schiff, with Andy Kim, and my sister Senator Angela Also Brooks. 5 of the 6 of us came from the House of Representatives. And so for us, it's almost like we have a foot in both worlds. And for us, this proposal is an opportunity to not only pass something here, but to pass something in the House that becomes a law and that gets something for the American people. We also have relationships and have been in conversations with our former House Republican colleagues who also want to get something done. And so today, again, off script, but in my heart, we are standing here for the American people saying, we can end this today. And we are saying to the President of the United States, I hope you can hear us. We are saying to the President of the United States, you said it yourself after Tuesday's election. This is hurting Republicans. Well, you know what? It's also hurting all of America. And so we hope that you will engage in something that is simple and clear. Open the government and make sure we restore people's tax credits together. Again, how long? Long if we choose to be. But we have a choice in this moment. And so we hope that you will come to the table. Let's make a deal. I yield back.
Mr. President.
Senator from Minnesota.
Mr. President, I thank the senator from Delaware, wise words, and I thank Senator Schumer, all our colleagues that have gathered here today. We truly come in good faith. I thank our Republican colleague who is listening to us right now, and for the good work that he has done in trying to bring people together. And we know there's a number of our colleagues on the other side of the aisle who've been working diligently with Democrats to try to resolve this. And we come in good faith because we know this isn't a blue state or a red state problem, it's everyone's problem. When we look at the people who are on these Affordable Care Act plans, they tend not to work at big corporations. If they did, they'd have health care. They do have health care. They tend not to work at government, local, state, federal. They tend to have health care. They work at small businesses. They are entrepreneurs, like the woman that I spent time with last weekend in Eagan, Minnesota, who has one employee, and she's so proud of her business. She's been doing better. And he had cancer a few years ago, and he got through it. He's married, has kids, and that plan, she pays for 75% of the premiums, her only employee, and he pays for 25% of the premiums. And she just looked at what would happen, and she thought, I don't know if I can keep him on. They're going to double. Those are the people we're talking about. Farmers and ranchers, 27% of the farmers in our country are on this kind of plan. So these are people that are just on the margin so much because they've decided to go out on their own and be entrepreneurs. Or when I talk to my rural hospitals, they tell me how the people who are on these plans, if they can't afford a doubling or tripling of the premiums, which is what we're seeing right now with the numbers that came out on the marketplace, if it's doubled or tripled, they'll just drop their plans because they've still got to get groceries, they still got to pay the mortgage, so then they're going to drop their plans, and then the rural hospitals, who are already just hanging on, aren't going to be able to make it. So it's this all of a mix of things that I think would defy people's predictions of who's depending on these plans. And I think we're starting to hear from them now. So we have this opportunity. This is really, I'd say, a practical plan. It looks at what we need to do to open the government again. It looks at the work that's been done by our great leaders in appropriations. And it says, okay, what can we do about health care right now? We disagreed with the bill that got passed this summer on our side, but what can we do right now? And what we can do right now is stop this doubling and tripling of these health care premiums. And it's not something that's going to help in the end of December or January. It's a now thing. They're making their decisions now. So that's why we came forward with a lot of people in our caucus, as you can imagine, having differing views and wanting more in good faith. But we figure this is a good idea so that we can, one, help these people in all our states, and then two, look at reforms. We are open for reforms, and then these reforms would have to be done before these tax credits expire at the end of next year. But it will get us through this, and most important, it'll get people through it, like Elizabeth of St. Peter, Minnesota, who told me, I have no idea how I'm going to come up with the extra $200 each month. This is what's happening. People who are terrified of what's going on. So we have this moment in time. We're ready to work through the weekend. We hope our colleagues are as well. So let's get to the table. I hope the president comes and meets with us. The amount of money we're talking about here is about the same as the money that went to Argentina. I'm not going to relitigate that, but it shows what we could do and why we could do it. So let's get it done. Thank you.
Mr. President.
Senator from Washington.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I join all of my Democratic colleagues here today to offer this proposal on the health care issue that has been holding all of us here and all of the American public for weeks now. Because after Republicans refused to work with us to save the premium tax credits all this past year, what we hear Republican leaders saying now is they maybe, possibly, we'll talk about health care. It just has to be later. We are so far past that. Open enrollment is happening right now. Republicans have already pushed millions of Americans off that tax credit cliff. If we truly want to help these people, Republicans need to work with us as fast as possible to pass this clean one-year extension. This is not some pie in the sky request. As my previous speaker alluded to, if Republicans had no problems with Trump shoveling nearly twice as much money at Argentina, why would they oppose giving this kind of support to our own American families? Is there no time for working families? Are there no funds for health care? Mr. President, I cannot accept that. We cannot accept that. We can act, but we have to do it now. Every day that passes, this damage gets worse, and, by the way, harder to reverse. The best and quickest way to address the mega healthcare hike is this clean one-year extension of the enhanced premium tax credit written into the CR that we ultimately will vote on to reopen the government. Like my colleagues, I have heard so many heartbreaking stories from people in my state. They're not political. They don't care about Democrats or Republicans. But I will tell you, they are at a breaking point. Some of them have been on the verge of tears as they talk to me, explaining how they simply cannot afford to buy health care for next year. That weighs heavily on me and all of my colleagues. We carry their stories with us. Their words are on repeat in my mind every minute I walk through these halls. I am here today fighting with my heart and soul. I'm giving Republicans every opportunity in the world to do the right thing. I've been out here on the floor, I've spoken ad nauseum about how letting these tax credits expire will actually hurt people in Republican states the most. So we're here today to say our hand is outstretched. We are ready to go, a one-year clean extension, and we can reopen the government and save so many families misery in this country. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor.
Senator from Colorado.
I speak today to echo the sentiments of my fellow members of the caucus. This is a moment where, at least in Colorado, we hear stories every day of people faced with the challenge of whether to pay their rent or to make sure they maintain their health care. People who have pre-existing medical conditions that are worried that if they go off their health care now, they might be pushed into a circumstance where they can only receive attention in emergency room situations, defeating the purpose of their treatments. By going forward and taking a one-year extension, nothing new, but just a one-year extension, we allow all those people in Colorado and across the country to sort through their health care issues, to re-equilibrate, and to make sure that they are not left out in the cold. And I think that's the key here. We're looking at tens of millions of people that will either lose their health care or have dramatically significant increases in the cost of their premiums if we do nothing. So I hope that we can come together and move forward with this clean CR with the extension of the subsidized tax credit for the ACA. Thank you. I yield the floor.
Mr. President.
Senator from Oregon.
All across our country, in every congressional district, in every corner of every state, families are suffering. They're taking a look at what it's going to cost to buy health care for this coming year. And they're going, wow, I won't be able to afford that. I guess I'll go without. And we know what happens when people go without health care. And this is clearly not something that is a blue issue or a red issue. It's an issue for every family, affordable, quality health care. And I know it's not just a concern held by Democratic senators, it's a concern held by Republican senators. So we have a common desire, Democrats and Republicans together, to address this concern. I think about some of the folks who have written in from my home state, and I know my colleagues on both sides of the aisle are getting the same letters and the same phone calls. Eric in Corvallis got a letter that his insurance premium is exploding from $183 to, get this, $1,588. Wow, that's, well, roughly a 7-fold increase. I heard from Leah in Eugene, whose monthly payment is going from $462 to $1,438. 3-fold increase. And Stacy in Lincoln City seen an increase from $1,300 to about $3,200, almost a $2,000 increase. So those stories are everywhere in our country. And there is so much work we can do on health care together. The president has said, let's negotiate on those complex issues after the government is opened. And those complex issues, they may be things like the cost-sharing reduction program. They may be things like, how do we lower the cost of drugs so we don't pay more for drugs than the folks in Canada across the border to the north pay for their drugs, or the folks in England or Australia or Japan. We can work together on strategies to see where there's waste in the system. Or are there scams and scandals in the system? Let's shine the light on them and let's fix them after the government reopens. But let's just do this one piece, extend one particular tax provision that's in law now for this coming year. So there's immediate relief to folks who are getting on the internet at this very moment and going, oh my goodness, I can't afford that. The Erics, the Leahs, the Stacys that exist in every corner of every state. I've been hearing from small businesses, and they've been saying Main Street is Pain Street. Why? Because so many of the small businesses in my state, and I'm sure in every state, go to the ACA exchange in order to buy insurance. And so they're reeling from that impact. They're reeling from other economic fluctuations in the country. And they're saying, can't you figure this out? Can't you figure this out? So I've been hearing from colleagues on both sides of the aisle, we want to fix these tax credits, these enhanced tax credits for people to buy insurance. Well, let's do it. We can open the government today. We can do it today. Today we can address the issue my colleague from Wisconsin was speaking to just an hour or so ago. He was saying people who are working should get a paycheck. That will happen if we pass this today. He was saying folks who are furloughed should get a paycheck. We can do that by putting them back to work, by opening the government today. And then we can negotiate on those complex issues to make this system work a whole lot better, because all of us know that our system is overly complicated, overly bureaucratic, inefficient, and we know that there can be improvements. So let's work on those things together. The proposal that the leader has put forward, the minority leader has put forward, says let's form a special committee to work on those issues and find some proposals to take us to a better place. That's the type of partnership that we need to give encouragement to the American people, that we're willing to work together to solve the challenges that they see every day in their lives at their kitchen table. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Senator from California.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, colleagues, I rise in support of this proposal to extend the ACA tax credits, extend the existing law for another year, reopen the government, and give us time to negotiate the longer-term extension of the Affordable Care Act. This whole discussion, and frankly the whole debate we've been having over the last several weeks over the Affordable Care Act, brings me back to the immediate aftermath of the passage of that bill when I was doing sidewalk office hours inside the Glendale Galleria. I had my little coffee table set up there and had someone come up to my table and ask me how I voted on that bill, how I voted on Obamacare. And when I told him that I voted for it, he was indignant. And he said, what could you possibly have liked? What could you possibly have liked about that bill? And I said, well, actually, there were a lot of things I liked about it. I liked the fact that if you had a pre-existing condition, you could get health care. I remember another of my constituents saying that he was 65. He was a pre-existing condition. I liked the fact that if you had a kid who was 26 or under, you could keep them on your insurance policy if they didn't have one. And then I said, and I like the fact that tens of millions of people that can't otherwise afford health care are going to be able to get health care. And he looked at me and said something that I never imagined I would hear. He said, and you really think that's such a good idea? That is, that millions of people can't afford health care would be able to get it? And I said, well, yes, I do, don't you? And he said, no, I don't. If they can't afford it, they shouldn't have it. And I recognized the moment he said it that he was speaking for millions of people. I'd had one of those huge town halls with 3,000 people, and no one would say that even at those screaming town halls. But his view was if they can't afford it, they shouldn't have it. And I think that view is really at the center of this debate. In the wealthiest country in the world, does the government have any responsibility to make sure that health care is accessible to people? I think we do. Now, who are these millions of people that are going to lose their health care if we don't extend the ACA tax credits? Well, let me just share the stories of two of them, of my constituents, who wrote to me. The first and said, my bronze HMO high deductible plan is $752 per month, and using most but not all of the tax credit, my monthly premium is $200 per month. That's using $552 worth of credits. I'm single, I'm currently single and retired, so my income is well within the limits to qualify for the credits, but if all the credits go away for 2026, this will wipe me out. And I will likely go without insurance, even though I know that's not a good idea. And here's the story of a second constituent. Anyone else gotten their health plans rates for 2026? I did today, and I will have to cancel mine. With chronic conditions requiring daily prescriptions, weekly doctor visits, current quarterly labs, and biannual mammograms, my share of cost will go up well over $1,000 per month. And as a senior on a fixed and low income, I could not possibly come up with $1,000 a month. Sadly, there are so many seniors who will be in this position. That's who we're talking about here. These are some of the millions of people that will lose their access to health care if we don't extend the ACA. So I urge support for this. As Leader Schumer said, we can reopen the government today if we can simply extend the tax credits for another year and give us time through a bipartisan commission to work on a more permanent extension. I urge support, and Mr. President, I yield back.
Senator from Connecticut.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I thank my colleagues for this unified support for a measure that is eminently reasonable. I thank the leader of our side, Senator Schumer, for advancing this proposal. It is a compromise. It's simple and plain, and I'll be very blunt, it's not everything I would have wanted. Like the senator from Wisconsin, my friend Senator Baldwin, I would have wanted the health care tax credits to be permanently guaranteed. I would have wanted a guarantee as well that there be no rescissions or impoundments of funds, as this president has done repeatedly. I would have wanted a reversal of the firings, the so-called RIFs, reductions in forces, that have been eminently unfair, and a guarantee of back pay to everybody who has been furloughed. There are other provisions that, for me, were profoundly important. It is a compromise, and Compromise is not a four-letter word. It is the way we get things done. And this picture of unity is worth 1,000 of my words, but it is also a clear response to a crisis that we face. And we face it today. It is a crisis in healthcare. It's a crisis in hunger. It's a crisis in air transportation. And for millions of Americans, it's a crisis of affordability. Nobody in America needed Tuesday's election to tell them that the costs of rent and electricity and food and all the other necessities in life are spiraling out of control. And yes, healthcare costs are spiraling out of control. And they are at the kitchen table right now across America, looking at the exchanges and concluding they simply can't afford those spiking premiums, multiples of 3 and 4 times, and at least twice what they were paying. And many of them are taking the risk that they will go without insurance. This measure guarantees an outcome. The majority leader, Senator Thune, has said he can't guarantee an outcome. All he can promise is a process. And I am unwilling to accept a promise of some vote at an indefinite point on an undefined bill sometime in the future, because the urgency of now for American families means they are making choices about whether they can afford insurance this moment for next year. And in fairness to the majority leader, he can't promise anything for either the Speaker of the House or the President. And they have been absent without leave. They have been AWOL. They have refused to talk. And we are presenting them now with a reasonable compromise that the majority leader can accept and our colleagues on the other side of the aisle should embrace. And the problem here is one of trust. What we've seen from the administration is a strategy of maximum pain to magnify political pressure. In just minutes from now, in the United States Court of Appeals for the First Circuit, this administration will argue that SNAP benefits should be ended after the president himself promised that they would be paid in full in compliance with the district court orders in Rhode Island and Massachusetts. There's no way to trust that SNAP benefits will be provided without a guarantee from the courts. The urgency that we face is also in air transportation. We all want people to be able to reach their destinations safely. It has to come first, and we need to make sure that the TSA and air controllers are paid. They are heroes for having worked for so long without pay. We need to stop the madness of this trend line. It's a through line in the administration's tactics here. It's a through line of cruelty and stupidity that has magnified the costs for the American people, not just in blue states, but all across the country. And we should seek reform and improvement in the ACA, eliminating any kind of fraud and stopping the spiraling increase in healthcare costs. But I should warn my colleagues, we will not sacrifice the ACA. Very revealing yesterday in the hearing of the Permanent Subcommittee on Investigation was the commentary from a number of my Republican colleagues, in effect saying that we should kill the ACA, an effort that has been part of their relentless campaign over the last 15 years to decimate this resounding and important law that now is embraced by the vast majority of the American people. And we put in the record stories of individuals from Michigan and Pennsylvania and Iowa. Aaron Lehman, a fifth-generation farmer who told us, "I grow corn, soybeans, oats, and hay with my family. The Affordable Care Act has been one of the best investments in rural health care in decades." We cannot afford as a nation to go back to the days when pre-existing conditions were a pretext for denying health care if someone had a history of cancer, diabetes, heart disease, HIV, asthma, depression, pregnancy, the list goes on. Insurers could force patients to pay more or refuse fully and capably and fairly. And I urge my colleagues to join me in supporting this reasonable compromise. I yield the floor.
Mr. President.
Senator from Vermont.
Thank you. Mr. President, we are now in the 38th day of a government shutdown. That means that federal employees all over this country who have to feed their families are not getting paychecks. It means that air traffic controllers are forced to work crazy hours, and we worry about the safety of our flights right now. We worry about Capitol Police officers right here in D.C. having a hard time feeding their families. These are hard-working people who are doing important work. They deserve respect. They deserve to be paid. This shutdown must end as quickly as possible. And on top of the fact that we have hundreds of thousands of workers not getting paid, we now have a president who, for the first time in the history of this country, is willing to allow our kids, low-income, working-class children, to go hungry in order to try to make a political point, a point, by the way, that the American people are seeing through. Mr. President, the cause of this shutdown is not complicated. For the first time in ever, the majority party in the Senate, which needs 60 votes to pass a budget, is refusing to negotiate. It is their way or the highway, take it or leave it. We got the majority, we're not talking to you, despite the fact that they only have 53 votes. And to make this situation even more absurd, and to show the American people the contempt in which the Republicans hold for negotiations and democracy, you got a Speaker of the House who has now given his members a 6-week paid vacation. Country is in the midst of a major crisis. Republican members of the House are nowhere to be seen. They're on a paid vacation. And if that doesn't tell you everything you need to know about whether Republicans are willing to negotiate, I don't know what will. Mr. Speaker, everybody in this country knows that our current health care system is broken. They know that we pay by far, not even close, the highest prices in the world for health care, while some 85 million Americans are uninsured or underinsured. They know that we are the only major country on earth not to guarantee health care to all people as a human right, something which must change. And what they also know is that Donald Trump and the Republicans, through their horrendous big, beautiful bill, are making a broken, dysfunctional health care system even worse, taking it to the verge of collapse. That legislation is doubling premiums for over 20 million Americans who are in the Affordable Care Act exchange. And in my state, we are hearing from Vermonters who are being asked to pay a tripling of their rates and even a quadrupling of the rates. Who, in God's name, at a time when health care costs are already so high, can afford a doubling, a tripling or quadrupling of their rates. That is insane. Nobody in my state, or I expect in this country, can afford to pay that. Further, that big, beautiful bill would throw 15 million people off the health care they now have as a result of massive cuts to Medicaid and the Affordable Care Act. According to studies, that would result in some 50,000 Americans dying unnecessarily every year. Low-income, working-class people who have chronic illnesses who will no longer be able to get health care. That is what we are being discussed. Anybody think it's a good idea to allow 50,000 of our fellow Americans to die unnecessarily each year? And all of this is being done in order to give $1 trillion in tax breaks to the 1%. No, Mr. President, I do not believe that Elon Musk and Mr. Zuckerberg and Mr. Bezos and the other multi-billionaires deserve $1 trillion in tax breaks in order to throw 15 million Americans off the health care they have and double premiums for over 20 million Americans. I don't believe that. The overwhelming majority of Republicans, Democrats, Independents don't believe that either. Mr. President, the American people understand that the Republican Party controls the White House, they control the Senate, they control the House of Representatives. And understandably, for that reason, poll after poll shows that Americans hold the Republicans accountable for this shutdown. But it's not just polls. On Tuesday, there was an election in which Trumpism was overwhelmingly rejected from Maine to California and a lot of states and cities in between. And one of the key reasons is that Americans want Democrats to make certain that they do not experience huge increases in their health care premiums or get thrown off the health care they have. That is what they are saying. We cannot afford a doubling or tripling in our health care costs. Stand with us. That's what that election was significantly about. President Trump claims to be a deal maker. In fact, he wrote a book called The Art of the Deal. Well, Mr. President, the ball is in your court right now. Help negotiate a deal. Show us what a great deal maker you are. Help us negotiate a deal which protects the health care of tens of millions of Americans, and let us end this shutdown today. We can end it in the next few hours. So, Mr. President, that is what this struggle is about. That's what this shutdown is all about. It's whether Republicans succeed in making a broken and dysfunctional health care system even worse by making health care unaffordable for working class and middle class Americans. It's about whether millions of our fellow Americans no longer have health insurance, and that many of them will die unnecessarily. So, Mr. President, we are hearing right now, every one of our offices are hearing tragic stories of families having to decide whether they can pay for their parents' cancer treatment, for example, or whether they will see a parent die without that life-saving care. There are millions of Americans now dealing with chronic disease. They're dealing with cancer, they're dealing with diabetes, they're dealing with Alzheimer's, they're dealing with health, with heart disease. And they are wondering, if they get thrown off the health care, premiums go so high, how are they going to stay alive? How are they going to take care of their parents, their kids? That is what this shutdown is about. And whether it is in Maine, New Hampshire, Nevada, or Vermont, the American people want us to stand with them. And that is what this whole debate is about. We cannot fail the American people. They are looking